What if I told you that your greatest gift is also your most dangerous vulnerability? That the very quality that makes you extraordinary, your ability to feel deeply, has turned you into prey for invisible hunters who walk among us every day? Here's the disturbing truth most empaths never discover. You're not randomly attracting toxic people. You are being systematically targeted by what Carl Jung called shadow feeders, individuals who have learned to survive by consuming the emotional essence of others. Think about this paradox. The most compassionate people on Earth are often the most emotionally drained, while the most selfish individuals seem to thrive with endless energy. This isn't coincidence. It's predation disguised as connection. In his most controversial private writings, Jung documented a psychological phenomenon so dark that he questioned whether humanity was ready for this knowledge. He discovered that certain individuals had unconsciously evolved into what I term light vampires, beings who can only maintain their psychological stability by draining the spiritual energy of empaths. The most chilling part? They don't announce themselves as predators. They approach as wounded souls seeking healing, as deep thinkers craving understanding, as sensitive beings who finally found someone who gets them. But Jung saw through the illusion. These aren't genuine connections. They're feeding relationships. And if you're an empath, you've likely been someone's emotional food source without even realizing it. Today, I'm going to expose the hidden mechanisms these energy thieves use to target, hook, and systematically drain empaths like you. More importantly, I'll reveal Jung's forbidden technique for breaking free from these psychological parasites while keeping your gift intact. Because here's what changes everything. Once you understand how the feeding process works, you become immune to their manipulation. But first, you need to recognize the terrifying truth about what's really happening in your relationships. The hidden truth about empathic targeting. Carl Jung's most disturbing discovery wasn't about conscious evil. It was about unconscious predation. He observed that empaths weren't simply attracting difficult individuals by chance. They were being actively hunted by those whose inner radiance had been extinguished, and who could only survive by absorbing the luminosity of others. Jung wrote, "When two minds meet, it's like mixing two chemicals. If any reaction occurs, both should transform." But his clinical observations revealed something far more sinister. When an empath encounters an energy predator, only one person experiences genuine transformation, and it's never the predator. Consider this from a survival perspective. Empaths develop their extraordinary sensitivity as a protective mechanism. The child who could decode every facial expression, predict every emotional shift, and absorb every unspoken feeling was the child who navigated chaotic environments successfully. But here lies the cruel irony. The same survival mechanism that protected you in childhood now broadcasts your availability to adult predators who've mastered the art of exploiting your gift. Dr. Judith Orloff's research validates Jung's observations. Empaths possess mirror neurons that activate more intensely than typical individuals. Your brain literally processes others' emotions as if they originated within you. But what Jung recognized, and what most therapeutic approaches overlook, is that certain people have learned to weaponize this neurological difference. They don't accidentally trigger your empathy. They strategically activate it. They've unconsciously perfected emotional manipulation that feels like authentic connection, trauma bonding that masquerades as profound love, and energy extraction that you interpret as intimacy. The shadow projection reversal. The most devastating aspect isn't the energy theft itself. It's what Jung termed shadow projection reversal. The energy predator doesn't merely steal your light. They convince you that surrendering it defines your purpose. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly in his practice. He noted, "What irritates us about others can illuminate our own nature, but with empaths and energy predators, this dynamic inverts. The predator projects their inner void onto the empath, convincing them that feeling depleted is natural, that exhaustion equals deep connection. that depletion demonstrates devotion. Recall the last time you felt completely drained after spending time with someone. Your body likely transmitted clear warnings: sudden exhaustion, emotional overwhelm, physical tension, mental fog. But instead of heeding these signals, you probably convinced yourself you were being oversensitive or creating problems. This is precisely what the energy predator requires you to believe. Jung called this phenomenon the gaslight of the unconscious. When someone's shadow convinces your conscious mind that your intuition is flawed. The four-stage feeding process. Jung's observations become truly terrifying in their precision when examining how this predation actually unfolds. Stage 1. Light detection. Energy predators are unconsciously magnetized to empaths like predators sensing prey. They can identify your emotional availability across crowded spaces. Jung observed that narcissistic personalities possess an uncanny ability to recognize empaths instantly. They detect the aura of someone who gives more than they receive, who experiences emotions intensely, who assumes emotional responsibility for others. Stage 2. Wound exhibition. The predator doesn't approach with demands. They approach with pain. They reveal their trauma, their struggles, their profound emotions. They mirror your depth while concealing their emptiness. Jung wrote, "Life's greatest privilege is becoming your authentic self. But energy predators have mastered becoming whoever you need them to be." Stage 3. Empathy activation. Once they've captured your compassion, systematic extraction begins. They manufacture crisis after crisis requiring your emotional labor. They trauma dump without reciprocation. They make you feel chosen for understanding them when others couldn't. Jung observed that empaths mistake being needed for being loved. Stage 4. Depletion normalization. This represents the most insidious phase. The predator convinces you that feeling drained proves the depth of your connection, that exhaustion equals love, that your emotional overwhelm indicates high sensitivity rather than systematic exploitation. The archetypal pattern. Jung didn't view this merely as interpersonal dysfunction. He recognized it as an archetypal pattern. The wounded healer encounters the shadow devourer. Jung wrote, "The most terrifying experience is accepting yourself completely." For empaths, this means accepting that your compassion can become a weapon, that your gift can transform into a prison, that your light can be consumed if you fail to protect it. In Jungian psychology, every archetype contains its shadow. The empath's shadow isn't cruelty. It's the unconscious compulsion to be needed, the addiction to rescuing others because being useful feels safer than being seen. The terror of abandonment so profound that you'll accept emotional vampirism rather than risk solitude. Energy predators aren't malevolent beings consciously orchestrating your destruction. They're unconscious entities driven by what Jung called the shadow's hunger for wholeness. They sense within you what they've banished from themselves. The capacity for genuine emotion, authentic connection, emotional depth. But instead of engaging in inner work to reclaim these qualities, they've learned to steal them from others. They feed on your emotional energy because they've severed connection to their own. They bask in your radiance because they've extinguished their inner flame. This creates what I call the psychological vampire effect. The more energy you provide, the more they require. The more you attempt to heal them, the more wounded they become. The more light you share, the darker their shadow grows. This isn't because they're inherently evil. It's because they're psychologically incomplete. They've disowned their capacity for genuine emotion, so they must constantly consume it from external sources, like a person with no digestive system who must keep eating but never feels satisfied. The empath's impossible choice. You're now facing what I term the empath's impossible choice. You can sense their pain, their emptiness, their desperate need for the light you carry. Your compassionate nature wants to help, to heal, to rescue them from their darkness. But Jung discovered something that changes everything. You cannot heal someone by allowing them to feed on your essence. You cannot love someone back to wholeness by permitting them to drain your light. You cannot save someone who is unconsciously committed to remaining lost. Real-world examples. The romantic energy vampire. Consider Sarah, who met David at a spiritual retreat. He appeared deep, sensitive, wounded in ways that called to her healing nature. He shared childhood trauma, depression struggles, his search for meaning. Sarah felt chosen, the one person who truly understood him. Within months, Sarah noticed constant exhaustion after their interactions. David would call during work hours with emotional crises. He would trauma dump for hours without asking about her day. When she tried sharing her own struggles, he would either minimize them or redirect to his pain. When Sarah applied Jung's principles, she realized David wasn't seeking healing. He was seeking supply. Her empathy had become his drug, her emotional labor his crutch. The family energy parasite. Michael's mother had always been emotionally intense. She would call with crisis after crisis, making him responsible for her well-being. If he didn't answer immediately, she would guilt him about abandonment. She would threaten self-harm when he attempted boundaries. Jung would recognize this as the devouring mother archetype, the parent who unconsciously feeds on their child's life force rather than nurturing it. Michael's empathy had been weaponized since childhood. The workplace emotional vampire Lisa worked with a colleague constantly in crisis. This person monopolized meetings with personal drama, sought Lisa out for lengthy support sessions, and made their dysfunction everyone else's emergency. The insidious aspect was how this colleague framed their behavior as sensitivity and depth. They positioned themselves as the emotional one in a cold corporate environment, making Lisa's natural empathy feel obligated to provide endless emotional labor. The shadow integration process. Jung's warning becomes urgent here. The longer you allow energy parasites to feed on your light, the more you merge with their shadow. You begin believing their projection that you exist to serve others' emotional needs. Jung wrote, "Enlightenment comes not from imagining light figures, but from making darkness conscious." For empaths, this means recognizing that your compulsion to heal others often stems from your own unhealed wounds. The shadow side of empathy is the unconscious belief that you don't matter unless you're useful, that love must be earned through service, that your value lies in processing other people's pain. This belief system makes you the perfect host for energy parasites. You provide endless emotional labor while convincing yourself it's love. You deplete your resources while calling it compassion. You sacrifice well-being while believing it's spiritual growth. But Jung discovered something that transforms how you see yourself forever. Your light isn't meant to be consumed by others. It's meant to illuminate your own path toward wholeness. The light protection method. Here's Jung's framework for protecting your essence without hardening your heart. The light method. L. Learn energy signatures. Jung emphasized feeling-toned complexes. Every person carries an energetic signature your empathic abilities can read. Energy parasites feel different in your system than healthy people. With parasites, you feel drained, anxious, confused, or emotionally hijacked after interaction. With healthy people, you feel energized, clear, peaceful, or inspired. Document how you feel before, during, and after interactions with different people. Your body is sophisticated radar that can detect energy parasites if you trust its signals. I. Integrate your shadow. Jung believed shadow integration was essential for psychological health. For empaths, this means owning the parts that want to be needed, that fear abandonment, that believe love must be earned through service. Ask yourself, what do I gain from being needed by broken people? How does rescuing others help me avoid my own healing? What childhood wound am I trying to heal through others? G. Guard your sacred energy. Jung wrote, "Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. who looks inside, awakens. Protecting your energy isn't selfish, it's spiritual responsibility. This means refusing emotional labor that depletes you, declining to carry others' unprocessed emotions, choosing relationships that nourish rather than drain. Honor your authentic nature. Energy parasites are attracted to empaths who dim their light to make others comfortable. The more you hide gifts, deny intuition, or minimize sensitivity, the more you become a target for those wanting to consume what you're suppressing. Jung believed in individuation, becoming who you truly are, rather than who others need you to be. Transform trauma into wisdom. Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is accepting oneself completely. This includes accepting that you've been targeted not because you're weak, but because you carry something precious that unconscious people want to consume." Your empathic abilities developed as survival mechanisms. Now they must evolve into conscious choices. You can feel others' emotions without absorbing them. You can offer compassion without sacrificing yourself. The 3 levels of empath evolution. Jung identified 3 developmental levels. Level 1. The unconscious empath. You feel everything but understand nothing. You absorb others' emotions without realizing it. You're constantly drained but blame yourself for oversensitivity. You attract energy parasites because you haven't learned to protect your gifts. Level 2. The conscious empath. You recognize empathic abilities and begin using them intentionally. You can feel others' emotions without automatically absorbing them. You've learned basic energy protection and can maintain some boundaries with parasites. Level 3. The sovereign empath. You've integrated your shadow and own empathic gifts as spiritual abilities rather than emotional burdens. You attract conscious people who reciprocate your emotional investment. Your empathy becomes a discernment tool rather than a manipulation trap. Jung's final warning. Once you begin protecting your light, you cannot return to unconscious empathy. Once you see feeding patterns, you cannot unsee them. Once you taste energetic sovereignty, you cannot return to emotional slavery. This knowledge will cost relationships. It will challenge your identity. It will force you to confront parts of yourself that would rather be needed than respected, useful than authentic, depleted than alone. The goal isn't to stop feeling or caring, it's to feel and care consciously, with intention and wisdom rather than compulsion and unconsciousness. Jung's final warning. Life's privilege is becoming who you truly are. But becoming authentic requires releasing who you think you should be for others' comfort. Your light is not a resource to be consumed. It's a presence to be embodied. Your empathy is not a service to be provided. It's a gift to be shared consciously. The world doesn't need more depleted healers. It needs awakened empaths who know the difference between love and enabling, between compassion and codependency, between service and self-sacrifice. Remember Jung's terrifying discovery. Energy parasites can only feed on unconscious empaths. When you awaken to your true nature, when you learn to protect your essence while sharing your gifts, when you become sovereign over your energy field, you become immune to their feeding mechanisms. That's the ultimate protection. Not walls that keep everyone out, but consciousness that lets only love in. Your sensitivity is not a curse to manage. It's a superpower to master. Your empathy is not a weakness to hide. It's a strength to wield consciously. Your light is not fuel for others' darkness. It's illumination for your own path toward wholeness. If this resonates with your experience, share in the comments what boundary you're ready to set to protect your light. Your story might be exactly what another empath needs to begin their journey toward energetic sovereignty.